This is episode 56 of Standing Out. Standing Out is a remarkable interview-style podcast with the intention to highlight women and men making outstanding contributions in their field. This podcast is generously sponsored by Think Global. Think Global is a business advisory firm working with women entrepreneurs around the globe to scale their businesses to the next level. Today, I'd like to welcome Monica Kang. Monica loves building bridges, relationships, and communities. She believes that change is possible when more people are able to understand and integrate into different worlds simultaneously. That integration is possible with creative thinking and an open mind. For Monica, those two worlds are entrepreneurship and public policy. Prior to InnovatorsBox, Monica specialized in nuclear non-proliferation as contract support to the U.S. government and as a non-resident Kelly Fellow at Pacific Forum CSIS. I hope I'm saying that right. She has lived and worked abroad at United Nations in Geneva and Chosen newspaper in Seoul. She got her master's degree in strategic studies and her BA at Boston University. To satisfy her love for entrepreneurship and creativity, she also sought out to be a Starting Block Fellow and Mentor, Hive Fellow, Design Thinking in DC member, and Startup Weekend organizer and facilitator in DC. She is also in the process of being a certified coach and proud to be part of Coach Diversity Institute based on International Coach Federation standards. Monica, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
That is one of the most impressive sort of bios I've read. And one of the things I kind of stumbled on was the nuclear non-proliferation. So tell us what that is.
Sure. So nuclear non-proliferation is just a big acronym that is referring to the groups of specialists and individuals working to have nuclear weapons spread around the world. And so there's often three different tiers. There's the people who do it in the policy level. There's the people who do it in the legal field. There's people who do it and also the science part. And the angle that I used to work in before I'm where I am now was I was in the policy space, but working with the kind of how to have the three parties collaborate and communicate with one another so that when decisions are made and when things happen on the ground, they know what needs to happen in what grounds. And the second part of the component that my specialty was helping as a contractor to the government, going abroad at times to make sure that when we do events abroad, that it's well done and helping out facilitate those conversations because, a threat in one country is a threat to all. And so the U.S. government has been on the front end of making sure that we can empower all countries across the nation. It's been a field, actually, I've been quite dedicated for a long time. And so when I got to be in this current transition, it was definitely quite a process.
How did you get into that?
To which one?
To nuclear non-proliferation.
Oh, so I got into it because I was tired of the status quo.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is that I was tired of going into international affairs meetings where you would have all the white males talk about Asia. Look around the room and I'm like, I often am sometimes the only Asian in the room or one of the few females in the room or one of the few younger folks in the room. Mm-hmm. And nuclear non-proliferation was a field that I knew that was not going to get away. It was a field that was so complex that it would take me a lifetime to understand. Right. And probably something that I won't be bored as a result of it. And somewhere that I thought would be good to have a diverse thought. And
right.
I don't know everything about Asia, but having lived half of my life there and also being Asian American, I felt like I could probably contribute a little bit more unique insight to those who have never probably been and making the same assumptions that something happened in Russia must be the same in other places, and this is how you should implement as a result.
Interesting.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think spending half your life in a country gives you some good insight. I think that's a fair take on it. Well then, okay, so when you were in that field, what happened to give you this idea to found InnovatorsBox?
So the number one thing was that The first thing is I love the work I did. And as I've explained earlier, it was something that I've built for a long time. But I think because I was pretty sure that this was something I poured out all my effort, when I found myself quite stuck and stressed at a job I loved, I knew that it was something that I needed to figure out what's wrong. And when people tell you, one, that your unhappy version is a happier version than who they are, and two, that they stop telling you, Monica, stop asking for something unreasonable. Being stuck and stressed at work is quite normal. That's just what life is. And I was like, well, what if it's not? Like, why are we okay spending 10 plus hours every single day, every week, just being stressed? That is not normal at all. Why are we calling this a normal work routine?
And you're right, we do. We're like, this is just what it is, right?
Yeah. And it's this so, I didn't like it. And so after being stuck and stressed for quite some time, and I remember, I think, coming back home one day and realizing, like, I used to really enjoy coming back home and going back to work. And I didn't feel that energy anymore. And I was like, what can I do to change? And so I did all sorts of things, from doing very artsy stuff to non-artsy stuff. But whatever that was, what I recognized was that once I put back my creative drive and understood how to implement that holistically, it was a game changer. It was no longer doing things because I was told to do, but like doing things because I really wanted to do, and putting a different layer. So like, let's say even the most simple task of like getting the Excel document ready for the next meeting. Before, it felt like, I'm reacting, like I'm doing it because I'm told to do it. But now I started adding an additional touch, like, yes, I'm doing this, but what's the additional layer I could do? And then I would start adding certain things. I would do a little bit more, or I would think of different ways to streamline the process. And that was me always now putting in additional input. And so the work no longer became something that I was stressed, but something I was excited and looking forward to solving, because every day I had a new problem to solve.
Right.
And when people started noticing that, they were like, well, if you can figure that out, what can I do? And after doing many coffees, I was like, there's probably a better way to solve this than having many coffees with it. Right. So that's how
like, how many coffees do you drink in a day, right?
Yeah. And so I realized that, that maybe there is a way that I can help and help be the cause and trigger that, and help open up more perspectives. And so everything now I'm doing is really going back to that first pillar of understanding, like, how can I do to help one person not get depressed, help them get unstuck from wherever they are, and help them recognize that they can be 100% of who they are by being creative, regardless of their job title and industry. And so that's how the whole journey started, of figuring out how to do community empowerment, how to do a lot of corporate training, but more in an intentional, transformative way, how to make products that can be used across. And so that's how we started.
Yeah. So for you, or for, someone that you're working with, how do you decide what activity or what creative thing is going to open you up or open them up? Like, do you know going in?
When they go through their journey?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It depends. I wouldn't, it's something like, so if I asked you, do you know your favorite musicians, like favorite foods? Like, you would probably, I assume you would have a yes for that. But if I asked when was the point you figure that out, you'll probably have to think a little bit more.
Right.
And so it's the same with creativity. Yes, we'll probably all figure out what it is, but it's not like, oh, I'm going to know this tomorrow. Like, you have to kind of figure out and spend some time.
Right.
What's working for you, because we're all creative differently.
Right.
And so, yes, there's a fundamental value that is very critical that comes out. So like, people who tend to figure out what they're most creative, that's something that they notice, that they lose track of time. They get a lot of energy out of it. They get very excited about it. They can spend all day in time, and it's something that they can get better at and see the improvement. But to identify that, you might need to spend a lot of time doing different things to figure out. Maybe you gotta
especially if you haven't done those things in a long time. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of people out there who are, so busy on whatever that they've forgotten that they can garden for 2 hours and lose, a good portion of the day, or whatever those things are.
Yeah, I know you definitely have to unlearn a lot of habits, which is why we do workshops, to help people reconnect with what they know, and remind them that the best answers are actually not from like these external people, but the people within you, but you need to get them to open up. And that's the part of the work.
What do you like about being an entrepreneur? You've had I feel like that's a big shift from where you were to being an entrepreneur of a startup, right?
Thank you. It has been, but I hope one of the things I keep in mind is I hope my kind of story would become so common in the future that it's really no big deal.
Right.
We all know that we have different personalities, we have different interests. So it's kind of weird why in the career space, we're still so used to just seeing one person doing one or two things. And if they do something different, it's like, whoa, I don't understand you. You must not be human anymore.
Yes. No, it's funny. I know someone, one of our family members has actually been in a job since he was 18 years old and is now ready to retire. Same company, same job. And
that's very rare.
Oh my gosh, that is super, super rare. Something that personally doesn't fit me. But then he looks at me, he's like, I don't know what you do. That's like too far out of the box. To have the flexibility and take on projects that are interesting to me and, work with, people we meet along the way. It's just a different world. It's interesting.
And the good news is for those who are listening and feeling like I'm not really sure, well, maybe good or bad, depending on where they stand, is that it's moving more and more towards people moving into that kind of category of what you've just explained of you. So if you're comfortable more with that space, congratulations, for this space in this society is moving towards that direction. So just be prepared and be equipped. For those who are a little hesitant, be aware that the change is already happening. So if there's things that you're noticing that you're uncomfortable, I would advise thinking about what is it that specifically that really bothers you versus the things that you're really open about. And maybe it's not actually the whole concept. Maybe it's something more specific. Maybe it's the fact that you like routines. You can completely create routines in entrepreneurship if you choose to. Some people do it still, for instance, like I will always show up somewhere at 9 a.m., leave somewhere at 4, but what happens in between? They like choose to be flexible. So you can choose to create that space, but shutting down completely, that's then you're going to have a difficult time getting into transition with the societal change.
That makes total sense. Are you seeing with that societal change, are you seeing corporate America embrace this innovation and creativity and flexibility more now than ever before? What do you see? Like, what's the insider scoop?
So that's a yes and no, because yes, you will probably see more words used in marketing materials, media, recruitment. There's more company ever before having an innovation center, doing hackathons, doing cultural development, and that's all great. And that's why I say yes. And the concern is that there's not let's say if there's 10 companies who's doing that, I would say unfortunately more than half of them are still using it more for the flashy stuff, but not really thinking about internally, okay, why are we really doing this?
Right.
What do we really want to get out of it? What are we really promising in our network, in our community? Because the number one thing as a business owner, regardless of what size, because all corporations are business owners, right? Like a business, and thinking about it, it's like you have a group of people. At the end of the day, innovation, yes, it might be bringing new products, it might be doing new things, but it's really directly impacting your people and your people growth.
Right.
What you're really doing to impact your people and have your people lead with it, instead of putting the buzzwords to attract certain people and say that we're now done.
Oh, interesting.
So that's a different layer. And I'm glad that more people are now starting to pay attention, but there's not a lot who really understand the depth. And so for those who are business owners who's thinking like, how can I really leverage that? I encourage you to dig really deeper and see, why are you really doing it? Ask more questions. And if you, for those who like writing journals, I encourage them to like spend a little time maybe jotting down, like, what is it that I really want to get out of the word innovation from my team, from my department, from my company? Is this what I'm actually telling them? Is this what they actually understand? And if there's a gap, instead of focusing on putting that nice flashy flyer, I would really urge you to think about, why is that gap happening? Because if you don't really tackle that gap, the miscommunication just increased, and then you'll just have a situation where tons of people saying like, yeah, we use innovation, but we don't really practice it because these are the stuff that we actually do at work.
Gotcha.
And that's interesting. Disengagement happening. Right. And it all connects back to people, because at the end of the day, organizations are formed with people.
Yeah.
And the work we do is for other people. Right. It's all a people problem. And so I think it's really, really important that people don't lose sight of that in the namesake of innovation. And if they say like, oh, we're too busy, we don't have a lot of money, then you've got innovation creativity all wrong. If you understand innovation creativity, it's the number one thing you need, because you don't have the resources, or because you really utilize it.
No, it makes so much sense. So what do you personally do to stay innovative, or to feel creative and innovative? Like, what's your routine or your outlet?
For me, it's a couple of things. I love learning.
Okay.
So one thing I try to always be intentional is every month or every week, I make sure that I have always like a day or a moment that I'm learning, whether it's like getting a chance to go to different events and I learn from different people, because I love learning that way as well, from different conversations. I've never thought of that perspective unless I talked with this individual who comes from a very different background.
Okay.
And that enlightens me, because then I'm reminded of how my definition of what I understand is always defined by what I already know, and I will never know enough unless I go out. So that learning is a critical component. I love watching movies, and so that I love that's always a way of I can break a little ice from my routine and really dive into a whole imaginative universe and really rethink it and say, okay, what did I actually learn from that? What did I feel about that? What resonated? What is it that I can learn? I was like, oh, I like that buzzword. Is that something that I can utilize?
Okay.
And then third learning for me is books, and then spaces. And so I love learning through reading good books and different people's perspective. I think a human mind is the most beautiful thing and the most complex thing, because there's really no limit to it. And so those are a couple of things I do throughout regularly.
Okay.
I know that I get a little frustrated because if I don't have any of those, because if I'm not in the learning mode, then I'm getting used to the documenting routine and I'm not seeking improvement. And so those are a couple of different ways that I always try and mix, and so it's never just one approach to it.
Right. And I could see where for a lot of people that probably works for them, having several things, maybe varying in length or varying in like what it stimulates. You know what I mean? But so I feel like that could really work. For go ahead.
And I would say the key thing that makes a difference is if people are feeling like, well, I do that every day, why do I not feel creative? It's probably because of the intentional part. So for me, I take every moment very intentionally. Every bad experience, good experience, like the space I walk in, I try to take everything as a learning opportunity. And so that's when I learn actually the most. If I just walk in, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Okay, I'll see you. And that's all it is. It's just cool. And there's nothing more, because you're not being intentional. And if you zone out and don't want to exercise that, that's okay. But I really focus on soaking in as much as possible every moment. And that's part of the key pillars of how you integrate the mindfulness aspect into your creative brainstorming and creative thinking process. And so that's kind of one of the ways to differentiate when you're proactively being creative.
Interesting. Would you say for someone who's listening right now and they're like, yes, I want to do more of this, what's like a tiny thing I can do? Is that like first step, being mindful and at your environment or your situation?
It is. And I would say, depending on where people are who's listening, it comes at different ways. It might, so for me, I don't just like sit in a room and do like,
yeah, right. Most of us
be thoughtful and aware of every single situation, but self-awareness and being mindful is a skill that you can always hone and be better at throughout what you do by being intentional. And so for those who are feeling like, where do I start?
Yeah.
The number one advice I tell is that, okay, so first, once you understand creativity is for everyone and that creativity is different, the number one thing you also have to remember is that it's not like you just have it suddenly and it's gone. You got to work for it. And so exercise, imagine thinking about exercise and going to the gym. We know that someone, let's say situation A, where someone goes to the gym and did work out for 9 hours. I don't know how that's possible. They didn't work out for 9 hours and they didn't go
I feel like there's those people though that do that where you're like, I feel like you've been here all day.
There's situation one where they go to the gym once, 9-hour, let's say, workout, and haven't been to the gym for 3 months.
Sure.
Situation two, where someone goes 15, 20 minutes, but have gone at least 3-4 times a week, have been very intentional about their 15, 20 minutes there and poured out their every minute while there.
Right.
I'm pretty sure what result would look better between the two. Same with creativity. If we want to really understand our creative strengths and be more creative, you have to practice your creative muscles. You can't just expect the result without doing the work.
Right.
It's if you're feeling like, well, but there's always some people have, it's the same thing with physical body. Some people have physical fit to run an extra mile faster from the start. But that doesn't mean that that person is always going to be running an extra mile if they don't practice and take into consideration of wanting to hone their crafts and skills. And so the number one, that's why I really urge people to think about, like first, once you understand that, really take the time to practice small doses more frequently so that you find what it is that you're really creative about and how you can integrate it. And so everyone probably has a commute, probably has some kind of routine in a certain amount. Spend at least 5 to 6 minutes every day, or set a 2-week or a 30-day or 60-day goal and see how that impacts you and measure it.
Interesting.
Before and after. But that's how you're going to be able to fully understand what might be your creative insight, what might be something that doesn't work for you, and what's something that you really crave more, because it's going to be something that you're going to be looking forward to. And only you will know what you're going to be craving, because we all uniquely crave something different. And that's why it's so beautiful when you have people who are 100% of them as a creative bringing their best talent. The world will be so much of a better place and less people being stuck at work.
Right. I love that. Okay. As we wrap up, my last question for you is, for anyone listening out there, how can they get involved with InnovatorsBox? Sure.
There's a couple different ways. For those who love social media, we're on most social media platforms. We're on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. So find us at InnovatorsBox on all of those. For those who like to get emails, we do a bi-monthly newsletter to share updates on where we are, some resources. So find us there. You can subscribe at InnovatorsBox.com/contact. And for those who want to continue actually learning in person, we do a lot of community events. You can find that on our website. We do a lot of corporate programming. You can find that on our website as well. And we also have a product called Spark, which is creativity card game. And I think people really enjoy it if you enjoy these insights, because then that's a starting point where you can practice using those questions for self-reflection as well as collaboration, and even for networking for those who hate meeting new people. Some work for some. But you see what I mean? Like most often when people go to conferences, they get exhausted. Spark can be your little secret guide to unhacking that and have a
that's amazing. Yeah. I think most people would raise their hand. I feel uncomfortable at, events or networking opportunities. Yes. Well, that's awesome. Monica, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And for those who want to connect on LinkedIn, they're welcome to connect with me as well. If you can just leave a note, that way I know where you're coming from.
Awesome.
Look forward to seeing some folks. Hope this was helpful.
Yes. Thanks, Monica.